Okay, hello, welcome everybody to today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from msdynamicsworld.com, and I am pleased to welcome our speaker today, Niels Rasmussen of Solver, talking all about enabling world-class decisions with a focus on Dynamics AX and Dynamics 365. As we begin, I just want to launch a very quick poll question, which I'll do in just a moment here, just to get a better sense of who you are in the audience and what products you are working with. That should be coming up right about now. As we get started, please just do take a moment and we'll share those results shortly. We do welcome questions today during the event. You can enter yours at any time. Look for the Q&A block just to the right of the main presentation area, or look for the question mark icon to enable the Q&A panel. And I know Nils will be leaving time at the end. Great, so without any further delay, let's get things started. So Nils, welcome to the event.
All right. By the way, did we get any responses there on the survey?
They are still coming in, but I can tell you, actually it's, and yeah, let me close that out now. It's about 70% toward 365. And,
got it. I see it now. Okay, interesting. Okay, super. So about 1/3 of our audience is running AX, and about 2/3 are on Dynamics 365. Great. Thank you, Jason. So hello, everyone. My name is Niels Rasmussen from Solver, and today my goal is to give you a good idea of what a corporate performance management tool like BI360 can do for you, whether you're running AX or Dynamics 365, in the areas of financial reporting, which would be in many cases an alternative to management reporter, but also in the area of budgeting and forecasting. So let's get started with that. So we'll talk very briefly about the world that we all live in today, and how that world is also affecting the type of reporting and budgeting that you should be thinking about to speed up your decision making for your organization and your managers. And then we'll talk about reporting processes and budgeting processes, how they typically take place today, and how a tool like BI360 can help automate and take away a lot of the pain of manual reporting and budgeting. Then we'll spend most of our time on BI360, most of that in an actual demonstration, and then we'll wrap up at the end and take any type of questions. So if you have questions along the way, please put them into WebEx, and then we'll get to those in about 50 minutes. All right, so a changing world. All of you are clearly aware of what's going on out there with technology changing the pace of almost everything we do. And you know, the easy way to look at examples would be Uber and how that's changing the taxi industry, Airbnb, how that's changing the hotel industry, and smartphones and similar devices, how that's changing how we communicate. So many of these technologies are now also requiring that we as managers can make better and faster decisions so that we can keep up with the pace of change out there. So BI360 and Solver being in the space of corporate performance management, we really see this as one of our biggest missions, and our slogan, enabling world-class decisions, is really all about supporting that need to make better, faster decisions. So getting right into the groove and the specifics here, let's first talk about budgeting. So I'm sure all of you that are on the line today in this conference call have a budget process and a forecast process of some sort. And if you're like any other audience that we talk to, at least 95% of you use Excel either fully to handle your budgeting process or partially. And that means you are that person you see on the screen. You're the typical spreadsheet juggler if you're the budget manager that's running this. And the issues are also very typical when you deal with a lot of spreadsheets around, loading historical data into a budget model is obviously very manual, and distributing these spreadsheets to users for data entry, and so on and so on. So tools like BI360, of course, strive to take care of those problems and instead make it a smoother, more automated process. So every single area of manual spreadsheet budgeting that's a pain is an area that we address within BI360. And the ideal thing, of course, is that you have much less time juggling spreadsheets and combining data and fixing formulas, and much more time really being a decision maker, and the same with your managers. So that is where the big ROI comes in. When it comes to reporting, many of you probably use the default financial report writer for AX and Dynamics 365, which is Management Reporter, and that's for financial reporting. And then you probably use a variety of reporting tools for sub-ledger reporting, reporting on payables, receivables, sales, and so on. And some of those modules are part of your AX or Dynamics 365 implementation, and some of those data types sit in other systems. And if you're like any other company out there, you have a number of databases where one of them is your Dynamics ERP system, and others could be payroll, CRM systems, statistical systems, help desks, and so on and so on. And each one typically have their own report writer. Each of your systems typically have some data of importance, and that means you have a slew of report writers, which typically in most companies means you're fixing that problem by bringing data to Excel and creating management reporting books that are presentable, whether that's presenting it in Excel or in PowerPoint. Most likely you've tried or you have some sort of data warehouse to try to combine this type of data to make your reporting process easier. So with BI360, on the reporting side of things, the goal is to take you from that person that's spending a lot of time fixing and combining data and dealing with spreadsheets to handle reports to give to your managers, that instead that becomes more of an automated and slick process, having one single database, which we call our data warehouse, to combine the important data, and therefore one single reporting tool that can look across all of the data, both your ERP data and others, and therefore one single web portal where your users can run those reports and drill down and analyze. So many, many, many up here, leading to a big reporting problem in most companies, to one down here, really helping streamline that so that you have much more time for analysis, and that's always the goal. So then specifically in BI360, how does that look? Well, when it comes to the budgeting module, some specifics are that we have an Excel-based form designed to create the input forms. That means you have a lot of flexibility in layout, formulas, and so on, compared to a proprietary budgeting environment where you're creating forms in the browser, or even worse, that they might just be hard-coded from the vendor. So Excel-based form design, but web-based input, because these Excel forms, as soon as you as a power user have built them, you deploy them in our web portal, and they automatically become nice-looking HTML5 forms, which means they will run on in any browser, on any device. And we have full workflow, so you can also manage a large number of budget users and always see the status of where they are in the budget process. And of course, us being very tightly connected to Microsoft and the Microsoft platform, our system, if you run it in the cloud, is running on Microsoft Azure, same place as you have Dynamics 365, and we have a pre-built integration to that. And if you're on AX, on-premise, or in the private cloud, you can use our on-premise version of BI360, and we have a pre-built integration to AX. And that same thing, of course, it's the same integration for budgeting as it is for reporting. Same thing for reporting. You design in Excel, so very different than the tool like Management Reporter or SQL reporting services. And most of you, if you're business folks, know how to create reports or to create layouts in Excel. Therefore, you come into BI360 with a lot of skills already that are reusable. So we build the reports with our Excel add-in, and as soon as you click the Save button, they go into our web portal, as you'll see today, and they become web-based reports. So design in Excel, web-based deployment. And our report writer is not only locked into general ledger data like Management Reporter. It is happily reporting on any type of data that you bring into BI360. Therefore, reducing the need for a large number of report writers for your different data sources. Dashboards is a very interesting thing when you're a company like Solver and you're in the corporate performance management space and you're tightly connected to Microsoft. As you all know, Microsoft has had the Power BI tool on the market now for more than 2 years, and it's become pretty much a world leader, also according to Gartner Group and their BI quadrant. So our focus is really on providing integration to Power BI when you want dashboards instead of having another dashboard. However, if your needs are very simple, so you don't need a fancy dashboard like you have with Power BI, you can also create charts. So if you just need trend analysis and charts, write in our report writer, and they will then be visualizations of your data just as part of the reports. So either use Power BI or do charting within our report writer. And finally, the data warehouse is probably the best kept secret in BI360. It's an incredibly flexible either SQL database if you're on-premise or SQL Azure database if you're in our public cloud, our multi-tenant cloud, where you can, through a user-friendly interface, prepare it to have any type of data. Of course, your financial data, your budget data, but also any other type of data. That's why we don't call it a budgeting database or a financial database. We call it a data warehouse because you decide what type of data goes in there. Last slide before we go in and look at BI360. So in a full-blown deployment of our tool, it could look something like this, where you have various data sources where one of them would be AX or Dynamics 365, and others would be other systems. And any of those data sources that are delivering important data for your decision makers can then produce those into our data warehouse. We have various types of ways to bring data into the warehouse, from OData connectors to SQL connectors to on-premise. You could use SSIS as an integration tool to file imports and so on. So your important data comes in here, and then you can go full speed with the report writer to design any type of report you want. I'll show you a number of them today. You'll see it's far, far, far beyond what Management Reporter can do for you. Or you're using the budget module to deploy a budgeting or forecast process to your end users so they can enter the data and you can report on the budgets and compare it to your actuals. Or, like we talked about, you have visualizations either through Power BI. We do support other dashboards if you have happened to have purchased like a Tableau or a ClickView too. But Power BI is definitely our route to go and our preference, or very simple visualizations actually using the charting in Excel, therefore in the report writer. So you got all of these options to enable world-class decisions in your company. Again, this is our vision as we engage with customers. So let's take a look at BI360. Today, because 2/3 of you are already using Dynamics 365, so you're already in the Microsoft Cloud, I will be demoing out of the Microsoft Cloud, out of Azure, using BI360 Cloud, which is sitting up there. If you're looking at, if you're using AX, you can still use BI360 Cloud, but you can also use BI360 on-premise. And the on-premise version of BI360, actually we have a brand new version coming out in a month and a half for the on-premise, will look exactly like the cloud. Okay, if you were an old customer, then you would have seen a slightly different interface for the on-premise. So every one of you, what you're looking at here is would be this same interface, okay? And I'm again demoing this today from the Microsoft Cloud. So this is our cloud interface. And as I log in, you will see that we have our main menu on the left. I'm logging in as an administrator or a power user, so I can see everything. If I log in as a department head that's, let's say, only going to do budgeting, I would only see the assignments, which is basically your homework, your input forms for budgeting. If I'm a manager that's only going to view and analyze reports, then I would only see the archive, and you're going to see both afterwards in the demonstration. If you're a large organization with multiple divisions and maybe you need different cooks in the kitchen, maybe different divisions want to have their own deployment of BI360, it's very interesting in the cloud because you can have multiple tenants. And you can, as a corporate person, actually jump between the tenants. So that's only if you want to have multiple deployments. Alternatively, you could have only one, or you could have maybe two, where one is a sandbox being a place you're testing out reports and so on without being in your live system. So it's very flexible with that in the cloud to have multiple setups of the product if that's ever needed. On this home page, this is actually a customizable page. That's why we call it a home page. Right now you're seeing it with a bunch of like training videos. But this can be set up to be your own website that you see as you come in here, or it can be Dynamics 365 or AX's portal that you see here too. So it's a very flexible homepage. Now let's talk about reporting first, and then let's talk about budgeting. So I'm going to put on the hat of a controller first, so that we have a storyline or a process to follow. And in that process, the first thing that you would do, of course, is to load the data. And let's say it is a month-end process. So we now have closed the books in AX or Dynamics 365, and we want to refresh the latest data. That can be done on a schedule. So we have what we call jobs, so that can refresh itself as often as you want to. And if you have many data sources, like you have Dynamics 365 and maybe CRM and maybe something else, they can refresh into BI360 at different schedules. So they can run separately and refresh whenever you want to. You can also refresh on the fly. So if you look up here, there's a run button that will actually then run an integration. And if you're curious about these integrations, when you're doing the initial implementation, then you will have connectors, and you see some examples of connectors here. So for Dynamics 365, you see that up there, and we can also use our OData connector for AX, and like I said, for on-premise, also SSIS. Okay, so these are examples of connectors that are pre-built that you will install the very first time that you set up BI360. Okay, so you load the data, and once the data is in here, then you are running reports. So in an example of a month-end process, then you're going to, in this case, as a controller or power user, probably follow some steps. And that would be your month-end reporting steps. So if I come in here, those steps could be like you see in this example. It could be what we just talked about. You close the books in Dynamics, upload, then run some control reports. Then once you see all your data is great, go through your financial statements and produce those. Maybe you have a step where you're adding comments on any major budget variances. And then you would produce your monthly reporting package. The cool thing in BI360 is you can produce those right inside of the tool. You don't have to send them out to Excel or PowerPoint. So I'll be showing you that. We call that the archive. You see it right up on the left side of the menu. And then after that, if you actually do want to have, let's say, a PowerPoint as a final resting place for your reports, we actually have an integration there too. So that may be a very last step for some of you. So that's an example of a process, and I'm going to follow this process now, skipping a few of the examples just so that we also get to budgeting today, where you'll see a similar process, but it will depict a budget process. So coming back to the main menu, control reports. So you loaded your data, and typically you would want to run the trial balance. So you would come in here, so you're the controller, and you want to make sure all the data looks great. So you could have very good reports like this. In this case, it looks super. Everything puts to 0 in my trial balance, so that's a good check. If you are also interested right now to capture any type of major exceptions, like a huge budget variance that may depict a wrong data entry or posting to the wrong account in Dynamics, or simply a performance issue, and you want to find it very quickly without having to look through the P&L and balance sheet and so on. As part of the control reports, you could have a report like this. This just shows some of the power of BI360. So we call this an exception report, and it has one purpose in life. That's to very quickly help you find the variance across any department, any account number, any company. You see those across there. And I might want to look for that variance in terms of percent of variance, so actual budget percent. So I can just come here and say, sort this, and immediately I see that on bank charges here for department 400 in company SAS, we have a major variance. But then I see on the numbers, yeah, it's not material because it's a small amount. So maybe I want to sort this by dollar amount instead. So we can do that. And now we immediately see that the biggest budget variance is company SUS, department 500, account 4020. Now, you can do whatever you want to with this. Like a report like this, you can also have a comment column, and you can enter comments at the line item level right here, or you might take care of that later in your process. That's up to you. The point is, at month end, in seconds, you can find any problems without having to look through financial statements with very powerful reports like the one I just showed you. And there's a bunch of other report examples here. If you're also bringing in receivables or payables data or payroll data and so on, that helps you check your numbers very quickly. The beauty is you're not hopping from one report writer to another report writer, as a lot of this data might come from systems also outside of Dynamics. So that gives you immediately a visualization of benefits in making your world much simpler when you have this type of flexibility to go across data sources and have one single report writer. The next step, once all of your data is absolutely perfect and you're happy with it, is to do your financials. So here we have an example of P&L, balance sheet, cash flow. I'm just going to open one of them because I'll show you the other ones later when I'm going to give you the viewpoint of how you would do a presentation at month end. Right now you're just sitting for yourself, you close your books, and you're checking out that everything is good. So here's an example of a P&L report that you'll be able to produce, and you can immediately see that it's far beyond what a proprietary report writer like Management Reporter can produce. Why? Because the formatting gets so much better when you're designing your reports with the modern Excel add-in. Now, you've still not seen our Excel add-in. I'm going to show that to you afterwards where I built this, but it's one click away actually with the edit button you see here. I can pop this right into Excel and make changes if I needed to, let's say, add an account or something. So we see the report, and if we're looking at something of importance, like this product revenue amount here, you can just right-click and drill down. So drill down exists everywhere to quickly do analysis. And let's say that I see a variance of interest here. Then I could do a couple of different things. In this particular report, I decided to use the built-in comment feature in BI360. It's sort of like a report level comment. So I click that comment button. And you can see I've been here before, and I've added some comments. And we can go and continue to add to that if we want to. And these comments will then be here forever with this report, with this company, with this month. And you can come back 3 years later, and it will still be there. And of course, the idea is that your management team may be coming in on their own to BI360 to do analysis. Hopefully, don't then email you and say, hey, what's this variance? Because you've already explained it right there. So let's close this and say that we're happy with that report, and you would do the same with the balance sheet, the cash flow. I'll show you those afterwards, like I said, when we're in the presentation mode. And then the final step is your data is good, your financial statements look good, is to produce a set of reports along with the financials that help your management team have all of the great information they need to make quicker, better decisions. So here you can see not just the financial statements that we looked at, but also KPI reports, some very interesting cash flow analysis that I'll show you, and some commentary analysis and some other things. And you will see many of these in a couple of minutes as we go into presentation mode. So you would produce these reports too, and now you're done. Let's say tomorrow morning you're presenting these month-end financials to your executive team. And right now all you did is run all the reports, you're happy with them. Don't you need to spend an hour or two combining these reports together into a presentation, maybe exporting them to Excel or making a PowerPoint? No, you don't. You can simply wake up tomorrow morning, and let's pretend that's exactly what it is. And I'll pretend that I'm you. And I'm now walking into a meeting room. You're sitting around me, and you're expecting me as a controller to present the financials. So I'm going to come into the archive. You could also have a license for the archive as an end user or executive, and that might be the only menu item you see, and all you're here to do is to analyze reports. And the archive is set up to very much look like an email inbox, so you really don't need any training here, and you can come in and say, I want to look at that report and just view it. But I'm going to do it a little bit more fancy now. I'm going to use a playlist. A playlist is a specific organization of presenting some of these reports. For example, for your monthly reporting like we're doing now, that would be an example of that, as compared to presenting the finished budget or doing a board presentation. So we'll use that. And you can make any type of playlist you want. So you're sitting around me, I'm ready to present. I never spent a minute creating PowerPoints or exporting to Excel. I simply ran this yesterday, and it's sitting in here. The item that's in bold really just means it was very recently published, and I have never opened it up here in the archive. So that's sort of a visual clue that this was updated. And that's cool. That's fine. So we're going to say show playlist. And then I'm starting my presentation, and I'm telling you here's the agenda for today. First, we're going to look at some corporate KPIs. And then we're going to dive into some graphical analysis of the revenue KPIs, and then some analysis of expenses and cash. And then we're going to go through our 3 financial statements. And then if you have any particular questions for me that are deep dive into the operational data, I have a backup slide here. You actually see it over on the far right there in red. That has a number of powerful transaction reports that can explain which customer did the biggest purchase, or which salesperson sold the most, or which are the biggest age, AR aging, those type of things. So I never have to leave my presentation to answer all those questions. So let's start on the presentation then. So here I'm then showing you the KPIs. Of course, like with all the reports in BI360, this could look any way you want it because you're building it with our Excel add-in. So you have tremendous flexibility to have different KPIs, different layouts. So we can see here that In some of these amounts, we have some variances we might be concerned about, that we want to analyze more. In this case, let's say we want to look at our revenue KPI more. Nothing gives better analysis than charting when you try to look across many months. So let's dive right into that, which is my next slide. And I call these slides, but they're really organized reports inside the system. It sort of mimics a PowerPoint, as you see at the bottom. And here we can do our trend analysis of our revenue, both the actual versus the budget versus the forecast. We have a dual axis there, so on the right side I have actually the percent profit margin, and I can see how that aligns and can be compared to my revenue. And then I've broken up my revenue accounts from Dynamics here at the bottom, so I can also see how much each of them are contributing to the total revenue. And let's say we're all happy with that analysis, and we're ready to look at the key expenses and also some of the key liquidity-related items from the balance sheet, like receivables, cash, and so on. Then we can analyze that here. Notice this is not just a 12-month chart, but it's a 13-month rolling. So actually up here, it's a 15-month rolling. So you have a lot of flexibility to look at data outside of just a calendar year or year-to-date, thanks to the way the report writer can go across months and years and be very dynamic that way. And we're happy with that. Then what about this? Exception analysis. Well, if you use the commenting feature in BI360, so maybe you as a controller, or in this case I'm playing the controller here, or your department managers, if you want them to be responsible for their own monthly reports, you've entered comments, probably only where there were significant variances. So in this case, I'm able to give you an automatic report that digs into the database, and it finds only the Dynamics accounts across all my departments and companies that had a comment made to it, because that's probably a very important item if somebody bothered to put the comment. So then I can very quickly see that's these items here, go through them, and we can do our analysis together as we're sitting in this meeting room. And then we say now it's time to look at the full-blown financial statements. And remember this guy from earlier, the P&L report we looked at. And let's say one of you asked me a question, say what's behind the service revenue here from last year. Would I now have to go and open Dynamics general ledger to find the journal entries to explain it to you, which will kind of mess up my presentation? Or can I figure it out right in the middle of my presentation? And you can, even though this is in the archive in BI360, and these reports were published yesterday, right, when I as a controller close the books, I can still, in the middle of my presentation, or as an end user doing this analysis on my own, right-click and drill down. So the archive isn't just a set of executed reports, it's still with full security in our system and with full drill down to the database. And if we want to see some of the commentary that I had prepared as a controller yesterday, notice that commentary is now sitting right here, and I can click over on it as I'm presenting to you. And then the balance sheet, then the cash flow. Now cash flow, oftentimes once you leave the finance department, a lot of people are not fantastic at fully understanding a cash flow statement beyond looking at the bottom and seeing increases or decreases in cash. So this report very much doesn't look like a report, but it shows the flexibility of BI360's report designer. I actually took each component of a cash flow, sort of flipped it on its side, so what you're used to seeing at the bottom of a cash flow statement is on the far right, and I'm showing each one as a 13-month rolling chart for each component of the cash flow. And in the blink of a second, we can see with red, the exception highlighting, which of the items on the cash flow statement are not contributing to increased cash. And if somebody is quote-unquote old school, of course, right here within the report book for that one slide, you can have the backup, which in this case is a 13-month rolling cash flow statement. So we're happy with that. We've analyzed our cash flow. And maybe you had some difficult questions for me as I was doing my presentation, and you said, is it the increase in sales? Is that some particular high-performing salesperson, or was it just a big customer? So I said, let's dig into that. So notice this guy's in red. What does that mean? That means it's a compiled book of actually different reports that's all sitting inside of one single slide in my presentation. So we're doing multiple types of magic here you can never do in PowerPoint, which is, of course, never having to link or export reports to PowerPoint, having live drill down from each report, and actually having single slides that have many reports inside them to keep my presentation very clean and simple. And in here, you asked about, was it a particular salesperson? So I go here and say, let's take a look. Was there any particular salesperson? Well, Riley clearly have had the biggest sales here year to date, but maybe it's a particular customer. So we go over here, and we can look at, sales report by customer, or maybe it's a particular product that's performing better. It looks like the reporting product, and so on. So we're happy with all that analysis. We're concluding the presentation, but then one of you say, let's say you're the CFO, you said, well, can we take a closer look quickly here on, I want to compare something between the P&L and the balance sheet, and that's a little bit difficult, right, because they're two different reports. But actually not the problem, because we have a feature for that. So here in the main menu, still looking at the monthly reports that we have on screen, I can select just the P&L and balance sheet, and I can click open. And now it splits the screen for me. So I don't need two monitors. I don't need to print these two to give to each person to compare. We can do it together right on the screen. So there's the P&L. And let's say you were looking at the net income down there, and you want to look at the retained earnings on the balance sheet. So we can scroll individually here, and there's our retained earnings, and compare those. And then maybe you said, what if we paid down some of these debts? Maybe that would help on our liabilities, or you have some question like that. That's sort of ad hoc analysis. So I say, all right, let's take a look. So let's see if we pay down some of this debt. How would that look? So now I want to go into some ad hoc mode, and it's sort of a what-if statement. It's not about your actual data from Dynamics anymore. So I click the download button. Remember, everything I'm showing you right now is sitting in the Azure cloud, right? We're in BI360 Cloud. So, but now we need it in our hands to do quick analysis. So right there in the meeting, we can say download, and that report zips down from being an HTML5 web report right onto my desktop. We see it right here, and we can open that up. And now what we see is a fully formatted financial statement, the same report, of course. So it kept all the formatting. Now you can compare to what you do in Management Reporter today, where if you ever export it to Excel, you lose the calculations in there, right, and maybe some of the formatting. If you look here, you'll see the formulas are still here. So we're offline. We just click Export. We wanted to simulate that we paid down some of the debt. So maybe this debt, what if that was only 90,000, like this? And then, of course, we can go and change cash, for example. And then you can immediately see the result, including if you had ratios in here like I have. So why can we do that? Because the calculation survived the trip from the cloud and down to your desktop. So still in that meeting, in seconds, we popped that out to Excel, we did our analysis, and then we're right back in the cloud again. So incredibly flexible, the way that works. If somebody says, I just need to bring this with me, I got to go to the airport, and I don't have an internet connection or something, can you just print it out? You just hit that print button here, and it will remember the fit to page and those things we love about printing from Excel. It will remember that, even though this report is sitting in the web portal. So you can then print and let that person have that. Or if you're in here on your own, sort of self-service reporting, of course, you can do all the same things. So with that said, that was a little journey through reporting. Now let's put back on our controller's hat, and let's talk about report design, and then we're going to hop over to budgeting. Now, everything I showed you so far is also available for budgeting. Of course, you can create all the same reports for budgets. You have budget playlist in archive to analyze the budget. So those of you that are listening in for budgeting, it all applies there too. Now, how do you build a report or a budget form? Well, you build it with our Excel add-in, either from scratch, clicking the new button here, or you copy something that if that new report or budget form looks very much like this one, you can just say duplicate, or you say I want to use a template. A template is some predefined templates that you may have. I have a few here that might have your logo in it and certain things that you have in all of your reports. So let's do a very quick P&L report as an example. So I want to use this P&L template, and I say duplicate, and I will call that a P&L report. All right. How do I know it? Copy that? Well, because I can see it right here. There's that report. So now we want to open it in Excel to edit it. Now this is part of the magic of BI360. You saw an Excel export earlier, but that's very different from opening the report in our report designer, because now you can actually edit it, or you can build a brand new report, and you're not looking at the static Excel export. And you see on the left side, you're actually looking into the BI360 Cloud, or if you use BI360 on-premise, you would see BI360 on-premise. We also have a live integration to AX, so in some cases you connect the Excel add-in directly to the AX database if you're an on-premise customer. Right now you're looking in at the BI360 database, and this data would come from Dynamics and potentially any other data source. These are examples. But we're building a P&L. So how do you do that? Put in a header. Now, we made this almost a little bit funny. We said, let's pretend that you've barely ever seen our report writer before. So we put the user manual for this template right here. So what did I do? I just entered the report title in cell B2, and then I'm just following these 7 steps. Here, a header, revenues. Here, another header for expenses. Now you could think, coming from management report, that where's his 100 rows of different Dynamics accounts? Well, that's one of the huge advantages versus almost all other financial report writers, is that we can do dynamic ranges. So what does that mean? Well, let's go back to revenues. Click on that row 9, do lookup. What's really neat again now, since I'm demoing this out of BI360 Cloud today on Azure, it now just pulled down the chart of accounts, which of course originates from Dynamics, and it's right here in the designer in Excel, and I could say revenues, all right, it's from this account to that account. I can do also like not this one and all kinds of other selections here, but this is a very basic range. That means any new account that you create in Dynamics, let's say next month, and you're running the financial next month, is already in this range, and you don't have to update the report. Versus in Management Reporter, if that new account is a row that you want to show on the Management Reporter, a report where you better well remember to go into all of the row tables that should have that account displayed to update them. Otherwise, you have wrong financial statements. Here, that will typically never be a problem unless that new account is in some crazy numerical range that you can't capture in a smart way. Here it will show up automatically. Expenses, you can do this very basic P&L here. So that would be from cost of goods sold down to my last expense account, which is right there. And I think that's about it. I can delete my little user manual here. And then I can say save. I never ever saved an Excel file on my desktop. This was totally managed from the cloud, popped it up temporarily on my desktop so I can design and use my Excel power to do this. And if you wonder where the grid lines are, I just turn them off. This is Excel, as you see, right? And then I can close Excel. Now we're back in the cloud. There's that report. Does it really have everything in it now? Because it was in Excel a second ago. Well, let's see. Let's run this for any month. This is period 3, the year 2021, where I have my demo data. I can pick, based on my user security, any department, any company, or consolidate them if I want to do that, and I'm running it. And there's the report. This is what happened with these ranges. It automatically created this very, very basic P&L report. And it's fully active. We should be able to right-click, drill down, just like that. And then you can publish that report. That's simply that publish button. What that does, if you have many power users in BI360, make sure until you hit the publish button, nobody else can see it. So if you're going back and forth, editing and changing, it's only you that see it until you publish it. So that's sort of a multi-user control feature. And then, of course, we can make this report part of the monthly financial statements or control reports or any of these other categories of reports that I've set up here in my demo model. You might choose to have different categories. So next I'm going to go to budgeting, because now I did sort of a soup to nuts reporting demo. But I do want to say one thing. If you're an organization that has advanced consolidation needs, that is a core feature in BI360. So if you look over here, this would be another example of a month-end reporting process, just like I went through up here, but with advanced consolidations, where you have currency reports with all kinds of controls on, after currency conversion have taken place in BI360, and intercompany eliminations and intercompany balancing reports, and then all kinds of consolidated financial statements, with companies across and elimination columns and so on. That is part of core functionality in BI360 if you have very advanced consolidations. Okay, so let's talk budgeting. Now, pretty much everything I've shown you in the portal, of course, is also available functionality to budgeting. It's just another module. It's the exact same Excel report designer where you build the budget forms. And what you're looking at here is where a budget manager would be managing all of the budget input forms, just like up under reporting, I showed you where a controller would be managing all of the reports. These are all input forms, and there's a lot of them in our demo model. These are all downloadable templates that you can use. Many of them are, very, very, very powerful that we've built over the years, working with thousands of customers. And you can recognize payroll, travel expenses, capital budget, other expenses, revenue, price quantity budgets, and so on. Of course, we have no time for a full-blown budget demo today, but this shows you that. And then the budget process could look like this, where you have a process overview. Let me just open that up, where you can now see that BI360 can handle incredibly complex budget processes, starting all the way back to where you have corporate and departmental goals, strategic goals. They might even go over many years. That should be reviewed or entered before the budget process starts, creating forecasts for the rest of the year, then doing a top-down budget, where you're pre-populating the budget as a budget manager, and then the bottom-up, where department heads start entering, payroll, capex, travel, whatever you have as forms in your budget process, and then corporate level, balance sheet budget, cash flow budget, review of the budget with comments, and then publish it all out to the archive where you saw earlier, so you can do a fantastic automated budget presentation for all the folks that want to see what the budget looks like. So every single step handled right inside of BI360, not with a bunch of spreadsheets and so on. So what would that look like for an end user? Well, we have workflow, which I'm going to skip right now, but in the workflow module, you basically combine your different input forms and you decide who is going to have what form. For example, a set of forms are for the actual January to December next year annual budget for your departments, but another form might be for yourself as a budget manager, just to enter corporate goals, strategic targets, KPIs, and another one might be for the top-down budget. We don't have time to go through all of this, so I'm going to just show you like 3 examples. Of course, one of the first steps in the budget process is typically to forecast the rest of the current year, so that you have a full baseline with your actual year-to-date numbers from Dynamics, like we talked about earlier, they come in through our integration, populate the template automatically, and then each of your departments, if you have a typical bottom-up process, would then enter the forecast. So all the yellow cells, excuse me, are showing where you can do input. And of course, you can have different layouts of your forecast. We have spreading, and we have many methods to pre-populate the data here. And you can also drag and copy them, like you see here. Okay? And then you'd save this with the Save button. Now it's saving that data. Remember, in my demo right now, I'm in the cloud on Microsoft Azure. You're in the browser. That's the only thing you have. You have nothing you have to download to your computer or give to your end users. They're simply logging in from their computer, doing the data entry and hitting save, and now that data is in our database. And as each user finishes, you can then report on it. So very quick example of what the department head would see for the forecast. And if I come back to another example here, then let's say you have that baseline. So back to you as a budget manager, if you're one of the types of organizations that like to do top-down budget, so you're kind of pre-populating the budget for all your departments, it's pretty incredible here. You can do that in seconds. So on the far left, from Dynamics, we had the actuals loaded up to September in my example. And then we saw how we did that forecast for the rest of the year. So we have sort of a calculated forecast for this whole year. And if you go to the bottom, notice this is a very long form. It has all my departments below each other with all their accounts. Go to the bottom, you can see we're tracking for 2.9 million in net income for the year. So that means for next year, which is in my demo model, the year 2022, and I'm pretending we're in the year 2021. For next year, I want to create a budget in seconds with the top-down breakdown algorithm based on a net income of 3.1 million, so a little bit higher than what we're tracking for this year. And you see it's totally empty right now on the far left. There's no budget numbers here. So we go here and we say 3.1 million is our, our target for next year. 3.1 million. And as we do this, let's see here. As we do this, then it spreads that automatically across, and the budget is created for all of my accounts, so you see down, for all of my departments. So that's why I said in a few seconds, I'm actually creating thousands and thousands of budget transactions. This is what you often refer to as a top-down budget. And you can do the same for forecasting. And then you save that, and then the next step, if you, again, have this top-down budgeting, is that the end users, the department heads, can come in, so they log into the system, and they are now ready to do the annual budget. And they would then already have budget numbers in there. I'm going to skip some of these input forms, so CapEx, sales, payroll, and so on, and just show you one. And then we'll go to Q&A after that. So your department heads are logged in, and they say, oh, nice, my budget manager's already sort of given me a first best guess at what that budget looks like. And then, of course, I can come in and say I don't fully agree with, with certain numbers here, so I'm going to make some, some adjustments to some of these. Okay? So then you can do that. And then the other thing you can do in here is that you can do what we call line item detail. That's something people always ask about when they see a budget software. Can you go below my Dynamics account numbers? And we can, of course, do that. That's a built-in feature. So if you go to other supplies, let's say there we need to tell our budget manager or describe what each of the supplies are rolling up to it. So just open the spreading window, and you can come here to line item detail, and let's say we have, like office supplies, like that, and maybe, anything else. I can spread that. I can say that's $12,000, spread that evenly across, and then I can keep adding other line items here as well, other, and then again the same thing, spreading or type in the number, and you can do many types of spreading. This is an even spread. and that will then automatically roll up, as you see here, to the other supplies, and it's in there. And you could also enter comments at that level. You will save this, and now that's in there. So really, the examples I was showing you was examples of the budget process, very short, very quick, because we're at the end of our time here now. And then the final step, when everyone has finished, you then publish budget reports and you write back into our assignments. Remember, we were here for the monthly reporting, and then you get the pleasure of doing a very professional budget presentation, because that's already set up as a playlist. As you see here, a playlist is that type of presentation, and you're going through, in this case, you're looking at budget reports. And everything is budgeting numbers, as you can see here, and there's a balance sheet budget and so on for analysis. So that is a full cycle. So at this point, get ready for questions. My very last slide is right here. If you want to talk to us, we would love to speak with you about how we might fit into your reporting or budget process. You see our email here, info@solverglobal.com. So then we can start a discussion. Or if your Dynamics partner is a BI360 partner, then you can start the discussion with your partner, and you can see a more detailed individual presentation, of course. I do want to mention that Solver Academy is an e-learning portal. It's actually new. We've worked on it the last 9 months. So it's a professional e-learning portal where you can train yourself. You can train new employees in the future without sending them away to a training class. So it's an awesome set of training videos that covers the entire product that will help you as potentially a little bit of a larger organization, train people on BI360 wherever in the world they are located. So Jason, that's the end of my presentation. You want to see if there are any questions?
All right, thank you, Nils. Yes, there are some questions that have come in here. Some of them came in a little earlier, so we'll do our best to sort of identify what exactly they were aiming for, in case some of them refer back to sort of previous parts of the presentation. So the first question, does the on-premises version work for Dynamics 365 on-prem?
Yes, it does. So we have so work, I think, means that it integrates, right? So we have the integration both to Dynamics 365 and Dynamics X. The question is probably, if you have Dynamics 365 installed, I don't know, in the private cloud or on-prem, it sounds like the question was. Yes, it's still the same two integrations that we have, AX and 365, so it will work for that. And you can have BI360 then with it on-prem, or like I showed you today, you can run BI360 from the cloud, and we're pulling your data from Dynamics on-prem up to the BI360 cloud. So you can have all of those versions of the installs.
Okay, the next question comes from Nikki, and it was asking, how do we build the report? And I believe the report was the balance sheet report that you were showing?
Yeah. Oh, how? And so that will probably be a very long answer, so I have to say it very simple. So if you saw me build that P&L report with the Excel add-in, that's where you build all the reports. And if you wonder about specifics of balance sheet report design, just contact us, and we can show you anything unique about balance sheet, cash flow, or other types of reports. But it's built there with the Excel add-in.
Can we choose different dimensions from Dynamics 365 in a report?
Yes, I built a very basic report. So any of your dimensions, whether you're talking GL dimensions or other dimensions in Dynamics, can be used in rows. So mixed, let's say, only department 100 for a certain account, or in columns, or at the global level of the report as general filters. So that's one of the benefits of BI360 is it's extremely flexible row, column, or global report level use of what we call parameters or dimensions, yes.
Okay, great. And one last question here from Wendy, who asks, are these reports delivered out of the box?
They're all out of the box. As with all report writers, they don't know your specific dimensions and chart of accounts, meaning which account numbers you have in your chart of accounts, but you can download every single template you saw today and use it as part of your implementation, and of course you have to just modify the formulas to fit your accounts and such.
Okay, well that appears to conclude our question list, so I think we can begin wrapping up here. I want to remind folks we do have a survey that will pop up after you depart today. Any additional feedback you can provide is greatly appreciated. Nils, thank you for taking the time today to present and answer all these questions.
Thank you very much, both to Jason and to all of you that were on our presentation today. Hope to speak with you soon. Thank you.
All right, and with that, we will wrap up today's event. Have a great day, everybody.